here for this. I'm here to talk to you today about the People's Archive of Rural India, and you will see in a few minutes what that is. But just to give you a look at it, that is the People's Archive of Rural India. It's a website that combines audio, video, still photo, and even has a research library online where you get any report on rural India that exists in soft copy goes up there with a summary to help students cite the documents they use correctly. So it gives you the copyright, year, publication, who are the members of the commission that wrote that report, and so on. So that's what we're about, and I'm going to explain in a while what the Rural Archive is about. In the meantime, let me talk to you a little bit about rural India. Actually, the news now in the latest data we have, the news that we have in from rural India is the National Sample Survey's latest round. What does it tell us? It tells us that the average agricultural household, these are farming households, not your landless workers, but farming households. The average income, monthly average income of the average farming household in this country, from all sources. Most people who work on farms have to do some other work off the farm in order to survive. Your average Indian farm survives by eldest son working on the farm, 3 brothers going out to towns and cities, one working as a chaprasi, maybe in the collector's office, one working as a primary school teacher somewhere, one maybe working as an insurance agent. The brothers send remittances to the farm, and at harvest time they get a share of the produce. It's very, very rare that a farm is self-contained and can survive entirely on that it can survive entirely on that return. So, the average monthly income of an Indian farm household from all sources, on-farm work and off-farm work, is less than 6,500. Now, if you take the household size as 4.9, you do the math. The exact figure, if you want it, is 6,426, the average. If 6,426 is the income from all sources, income, not expenditure, income from all sources of an average household size of, take it as 4 if you like, if you don't want 4.9, but just take it and see what it means. These are the people who put the food on your table. That is the second thing that the new data shows us is that more than 50% of these households are in debt, which is where I think the data are entirely wrong. There are reasons for that. The reason it's quite ridiculous to suggest that 50% are severely in debt is to suggest that the other 50% are not. That's nonsense. There is no farm household which is not in some degree of debt, and the severe debt would probably be, much closer to 78%. The reason why the data do not easily capture that is because people are much less willing to talk to the surveyor or the investigator. They're much less willing to talk about private money lender debt. So bank debt will be more or less accurately captured. But money lender debt, when you are sitting there asking, as a journalist who looks at the debt issue and finds out, when I'm sitting there talking to him about his debt, he will tell me everything about the bank. He will be much more cagey about the money lender for the simple reason that the money lender could be sitting in that room as part of the group discussion. Because he's come along to see, okay, there's this guy in a pant and shirt coming, he's been a government official, has he come to give him some money? If I give him any money, he's going to take it. So they're much more cagey about talking, and then after we leave, the money lender still lives in the room. So he's much more cagey about talking about money lender debt than he is about bank debt. Okay? So the 52% in severe debt, take it with a barrel of salt. It's much higher than that. And then they give you figures for bank debt, figures for money lender debt, which I really would not advise you to take seriously. But what they do give you, which you can, if you don't want it to be 6426, let it be 7. Still, what sort of a figure of income is that? What kind of figure of income is that? If it is 7. Your primary school teacher, find out in Maharashtra what a primary school teacher is. Again, I say these are the people who put the nation's food on its table. Second, the data of this is one source, the National Sample Study. Another major source of data, of course, is the Census of India 2011 on rural India. By the way, does anyone know how rural is defined? If you go by your census, and it is the only definition there is. Anything that's not urban is rural. That's how it's defined. There's a definition for urban. There is, and whatever doesn't, well, that makes sense because societies were 100% rural and maybe 99% rural and 1% urban. As you urbanized, you needed to define the urban. Okay, it's like this. Suppose you want to understand unemployment. You really need a definition of employment. To understand what is unemployment, you have to know what's the definition of employment. So in that historic process, anything that's not urban is rural. The census doesn't have semi-urban and semi-rural. It has urban, it has rural. It also it divides the population into workers and non-workers. Workers are workers. There are main workers, that is people who do work at a profession for more than 183 days, which is 6 months. Then there are marginal workers who work at something for less than that 6 months. The reason, again, you have, say, how would this division make sense in farming? If anybody who did 3 days farming becomes a farmer, then all your corporate executives growing grapes in Nashik on their, holiday home would qualify as farmers. So you take the 6-month thing because if you've been working 6 months at one occupation, it means you're dependent on that. It means that is the main source of your dependence. That's what you're mainly dependent on. So census divides that into, in farming, the full farmer is called cultivator main worker, meaning he's doing more than 183 days on that farm. And it doesn't just mean owner. Please, the census definition is much broader and more sensible in the sense it says operating a piece of land, which means a tenant farmer is also a tenant, is also a farmer. In this country, millions of your farmers are actually tenants. Right? They don't own the land. They lease the land and they cultivate. That has a lot of importance as well. Then there are the rest of the population, apart from farming, business, whatever, there are the non-workers. The non-workers include pensioners, retirees, and you guys. And so these are the broad divisions. The data of the census 2011 shows us 2 or 3 extraordinary things never seen in any census previously in your history. Number one, the population of full farmers has fallen by 15 million in the 20 years of the economic year. Since 1991, the population of cultivator main worker has fallen 15 million between the 91 census and the 2001 census. It fell by 7.2 million. Between the 2001 census and the 2011 census, it fell by 7.7 million, which means the rate of exit intensified in the second decade. Now 7.2 by 7 plus 7.7 comes to nearly 15 million. But even if you just take the 7.7 million of 2001 to 2011, if you do the math, it tells you that you are losing full status farmers at the rate of 2,038 a day. Do it. 77 lakhs divided by 365. Do the math. Yeah. I know you look shocked, but it's true. You're losing full status farmers at the rate of 2,000 plus every day. 77 lakhs means 7.7 lakhs per year. 7.7, so 7.7 lakhs divided by 365, I figure, gives you just over 2,000. So that's one thing. Where are they going? Where are these people going? Added 91 million. That's a phenomenal switch around of 46 million. That is not a small figure. It's fairly close to the population of South Africa. Those who are, I feel bad about you guys standing. You want to sit down or you're comfortable as you are? Okay. So you have what accounts for this gigantic shift, something which has never happened since 1921. And when it happened in 1921, that was for a reason that does not exist in our times. In 1921, the influenza epidemic, which came back with soldiers coming from World War I in France, where the civilized European powers had used all poisons, gases, every kind of poison imaginable, which they had, mustard gas, everything, on the battlefield. And India lost thousands and thousands of troops in that battle, dying for the British Raj and its colonial wars. When they came back, there was a huge influenza epidemic. In fact, there was an influenza epidemic across the world, originating from the battlefields of Europe. Spain lost close to 500,000 people. India lost, according to historians, anywhere between 11 and 22 million human beings. More commonly accepted figure is about 15 to 16 million human beings. So there's a net deficit in the rural population. Okay? And so you have the only time in history when the census showed a greater addition to urban population than to rural population. But in the last 10 years, we did not have, we didn't have any epidemic of that kind. We love scaring ourselves with exotic diseases. Avian flu killed 3 people. Plague killed 54. Tuberculosis kills 500,000 every year and you don't get damage. But plague, I don't know, you guys were too young, 94, 95, we had a plague that scared the hell out of everybody and everybody, evacuated Surat. The reason why the exotic diseases scare people, apart from the fact that it keeps it keeps our eyeballs glued to the channels. Plague, it scares the rich, it scares the elite. Plague germs are notorious for their non-observance of classification. Tuberculosis is primarily amongst the plague germs. Plague germs board aircraft and travel class to New York, which is why they spray these days. Ever since the plague period, As you're coming in, they'll say WHO requirements insist that we spray the aircraft with it, etc. That kind of nonsense. So there was no great influenza epidemic in the 90s and 2000s. So then how do you account for the fact that urban India has suddenly added more people than rural India? The census gives you three reasons, two of which do not account for much. One reason is family size, growth rate. Well, actually, rural families are still larger than urban families, and though the rate of growth in rural India has actually fallen more sharply than the rate of population growth in urban India. The big falls have come in rural India. Anyway, the second thing that the census talks to you about is reclassification. A lot of villages get reclassified as towns and they get to reclassify as towns. But that doesn't account for much because there are two kinds of towns. I hope it's useful for you to know these things about your country. Okay? There are two kinds of towns in the census. Statutory towns and census towns. Statutory towns are those which are evolved towns. Right? A proper town which has its municipality, its corporation, its fire brigade, the whole paraphernalia. A census town is very different. A census town is simply a place where 2-3 villages have collapsed and become a town. Okay. Like Chennai rural becomes a town because 3-4 villages, and the definition of the urban is very key. Population above 5,000, 400 plus density per square kilometer, and the most important, less than 25% of the male workforce is in agriculture. So what does it mean? It means agriculture has collapsed in that area. If less than 25% of the male workforce are in agriculture, it means agriculture has collapsed. Till the 2011 census, statutory towns were growing, census towns were stagnating. They were growing at a very much slower rate. In the 2011 census, statutory towns are declining. I mean, the rate of growth. Census towns are exploding. So those towns are villages. It means in about 3,000, 4,000 villages, agriculture has clearly collapsed, and there's nothing much to be done about it. That's how your growth in urban places comes. So what the third reason the census gives you, which is the valid one in my opinion, is migrations. And that has been huge, as we can discuss. In fact, one of our categories in the People's Archive is called the rural in the urban. Please look around you on your campus today. Please look at who does your work. Look at your dhobies, look at your jamedars, look at whoever you want to look at, your watchmen, your security staff. See what percentage of them are rural migrants. All the cities and towns in this country today run on the energies of rural migrants. If they did work, you wouldn't be living here. Right? So the migrations have been gigantic. Now for me, so these are the 2 or 3 major things coming out of the census. There's the census data, there's the NSS data, there's other stuff which we can talk about. But for me, rural India is simply the most complex part of planet Earth. When you talk about rural India, you're talking about 833 million people, 780 languages, 780 languages, 6 of those languages spoken by more than 50 million people, 3 of those languages spoken by more than 80 million people, 1 of those languages spoken by more than 500 million people. At the other end of the spectrum, languages spoken by less than 200,000 people, and I'll show you a clip where the language of Saimar in Tripura is down to its last 7 speakers. Okay. So you've got the most astonishing linguistic diversity in the planet. In the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution, it recognizes 21 or 22 languages as official. The fun part is that several states in this country, their official language in the assembly is not part of the 8th schedule. Like the official language of the Tripura assembly is Kokborok. It's not part of the 8th schedule. It's not recognized as an official language. No, it's the language in which the assembly can conduct its business. It's one of 3 languages, and that's the spoken by the biggest tribe in Tripura. So you have this phenomenal linguistic diversity. You have an equally phenomenal occupational diversity. There are professions in rural India that do not exist anywhere else in the world. There are professions in rural India which exist in some other South Asian countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and maybe even if you take, say, toddy tappers, if you take, they exist perhaps even in the Philippines to some extent in Southeast Asia. But the largest body of toddy tappers in the planet in existence are in peninsular India. The largest numbers, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra. This is where the gigantic numbers of the toddy tapper workforce in our world exist. You have professions, unbroken professions. By the way, this country has, no one knows how many schools of weaving we have. No one has made an exhaustive listing of the schools of pottery that you have. And that's okay with me. I mean, it's nice to know that there are more than we know. But it's also nice to try and document them and record them, because many of them are dying. And you have professions, including in the line of engineering, by the way, and technology, which as an unbroken profession do not exist anywhere else. You have, how many of you have heard of, you've all heard the word. What does it mean? Khalasi. Who's a Khalasi? Conductor. Helper of a driver.
Who gives huge masses of.
The Khalasis are a community. It's associated with sailing and shipping, but the Khalasis are a community who you guys should know about, because they are super technologists. The Khalasis are a community in Malabar, mostly Muslim, almost entirely Muslim, who for 2,000 years, from before the time of Christ, have been launching boats and sailing vessels. The huge problem that those boat builders faced in the ancient and medieval world was that you built these big ships, you built them on dry land. How did you get your ship from dry dock to water without damaging the wooden base? You could sling it over your shoulder and pull it. That was an option, but not one I would advise. And if it's a large one, designed to take 200, 300 people, that wasn't going to do it. Different professional races existed at the time, like the Phoenicians. The Romans got the Phoenicians to do their ship launching for them. They trained in that. Very few, but none of the communities have remained in the profession anywhere else. If you ask the Khalasis of Malabar who they are, they will tell you very proudly, we are hydraulics engineers. And that's who they are. They launch ships, they launch boats. To this day, they are launching the doors of Bahrain, Kuwait. It's the Khalasi community of the Malabar that is launching those boats. In year 2000, to give you an example, and I think this should be interesting and important to people in technology, a cyclone blew a train off a bridge in Malabar, and unobligingly the train landed in the middle of the river. The army was brought in because only the army had the cranes to pull it up. Only the army had the cranes. They couldn't get the cranes close enough. because it was in the middle of the river. The cranes could pull out the thing, but they couldn't get closer. If you had to build pontoon bridges strong enough to take the cranes, then by that time, it was probably cheaper to let the train remain in the water than construct stuff that could take the crane. The government of Kerala officially signed a contract with the Kalasis, who brought the train out in 100 hours. How's that for technology? They brought the train out in 100 hours to a point where the army's cranes could pick up the train. How did they do it? I assure you, they did not throw ropes around the train with drivers. It's a bit tough. They went into the water, they created underground canals, channels, they created spurious temporary embankments along the sides of the river, and they used the force of the river in flood and spate to move the train to the shore. They used to, rather than pulling the train against the resistance of the water, they used the force of the water to move the train to the shore. I think that's good hydraulics. Right? Do you agree? There is this astonishing professional diversity. Now, rural India has also much that is ugly, barbaric, regressive, much that, in my opinion, and the opinion of most decent human beings, deserves to die. It has, on the one hand, on the one hand, on the other hand, it has some of the most beautiful things designed by human civilization. But the nature of the transformation that is in rural India in the last 20 years, the tragedy of that transformation is that it undermines and destroys the beautiful, undermines and destroys that which you should cherish, like it's wiping out the weaving industry of Kanchipuram and Arni, like it's wiping out the Banarasi silk industry and those weavers. Weavers were committing suicides before the farm suicides began. If you look at the Pochampalli weavers in Andhra Pradesh, before the first farm suicides were reported, 91, 92, 72 of them committed suicide in a year. So, the nature of our transformation, this is man-made, policy-driven transformation. On the one hand, the beautiful and the brightest and the best are getting undermined. On the other hand, that transformation tends to strengthen the most regressive and barbaric elements. So while the schools of weaving and pottery are dying, the crafts of Haryana are doing very well, thank you. They've got a chief minister who praises them every time he speaks. Right? By the way, a similar thing happened in the time of colonialism, when all the anti-caste movements disappeared, especially in the north. So, rural India is in the grip of this devastating transformation. I also ask you a question, where did all those farmers go? If 15 million people quit being full-time farmers, there's one more answer to that question. If you look at the primary census extract and its many columns, as the farm population collapses, the agricultural labor population soars up. Okay, like in my home state of Andhra Pradesh, for instance, in 10 years, 2001 to 2011, number of farmers declined by 1.3 million. Number of agricultural laborers rose by 3.4 million. What does it tell you? It tells you that across the country, millions of farmers are losing their landed farmers, full-time farmer status and falling into the ranks of the agrarian underclass. Am I confusing you? Okay. So that's what's happening. Your farming is in a gigantic crisis, which is also reflected in the fact that the National Crime Records Bureau data show us that 300,000 farmers have committed suicide since 1995. That's an official figure. Take my word for it. It's a severe and gross underestimate. It largely ignores people who are not socially considered as farmers. For instance, it excludes women farmers. Because in our society, the woman is not considered a farmer. She's the farmer's wife. 67% of agricultural work in this country is done by women. The bulk of work on any farm household is done by women. But we don't accept women as farmers, and their names are not on the patta. Their names are not in the, on the title deed. They're not going to be. They have no ownership, no property rights in land, not by law, but in custom. As I said, there are many horrible things in rural India that should happen, but that is the situation. So the farmer population has been declining, the agricultural labor population. Now all these incredible things. Here is this 833 million people, 780 languages. And by the way, when I was about to write 780 languages on the website, I phoned the guy who was in charge of the linguistic survey, People's Linguistic Survey Professor, Ganesh Devi. And I asked him, Ganesh, is it 780 a correct figure? Are you confirmed? He said, no, you say about or over 800, we got it slightly wrong. I said, how slightly? He said, well, maybe about 100. So I said, you're telling me there are between 880 and 900 languages? He said, I said, how could you miss 100 languages? He gave me an answer you can only get in rural India. He said, what to do? We had only 3,000 researchers. Well, 833 million people, 3,000 ain't such a big figure. Here is this place which I call a continent within a subcontinent, a planet within the country. It has astonishing diversity, astonishing just about everything. Every year my friends and I do a ride from Kalahandi, Odisha to Malkangiri in the same state. It's a route of 280 kilometers. We take a long time over it because we stop all along the way because there are 40 languages spoken on that route. Many of them completely unique, not linked to either the Indo-European family or to the Dravidic family. They're not even in the Tibetic family of language. They just have no known origin, no family. So, in this gigantic transformation that's taking place, we do not have any of this reflected in our media. We do not have any of this reflected in your textbooks. Television, we want to talk. You don't have any of this stuff. One generation, mine, has lost its connection with rural India. Another generation, yours, has very little idea that such a connection exists. Yet, every one of us was a villager 5 generations ago. Go back and trace it. Maybe even 3 generations ago. How can we ignore this? How can the 1/3 of us Indians have no knowledge and forget our roots in the other 2/3? That's why the People's Archive of Rural India exists. It's about the everyday lives of every day. It's not today. I emphasize this repeatedly because we're not looking at elites. We're not looking at celebrities. And I believe the people we are looking at, and I think you'll agree with me, are far more interesting. Today, websites exist and apps exist which you can download on your phone, which tell you where exactly your favorite celebrity is at this moment, which restaurant she or he is dining at, and what they just ordered. You're aware of that, right? That these websites and apps exist. Yeah. So, there's 833 million people who also exist, whose labor feeds this country, whose labor, whether in rural India or in urban India where they come, makes this country fire, makes this country tick. What about for them? So that's how the idea of the Rural Archive came about. I have been, this is my 35th year as a journalist, 22 of them full-time as a rural reporter, which means I spent up to 270 days on average in a given year on in rural India. I'm going to show you snippets. No, I'm not going to show you a single full video. I'm going to show you snippets of different parts of different videos, and I'm going to show you things online on the site. The first, about the extraordinary in the ordinary, is I'm going to show you 2 minutes 30 seconds of a video. We're in the Posco area, Jagatsinghpur, Odisha. We arrive at the village. There is no media there, just Purushottam Thakur, fellow journalist, and myself. We arrive there, and one more local journalist who's carrying the camera. And the villagers come to the edge of the village, thinking we're the police, which is bad, and are ready to confront us, and then find that we're not the police, and they sit there because they're expecting the police to come in and take them that day, despite a high court order in their favor. Despite that, because the government see themselves as the executive agencies, as the executive committees of the corporations. Despite a high court order restraining the government from evicting these people, this was going on. In that, as they sat there, one of them, part-time fisherman, part-time because that's near the mouth of where the river meets the sea. You can only fish for 4 to 5 months. Then you got to do something else. His name is Purna Das. He's a fisherman and a laborer, a landless laborer. But he's something more than that. He's an Indian tradition troubadour. He's a poet and a singer. Okay? He's a poet and a singer. Like you have in every state in this country, in the rural regions, you have your poet singers. Notice that there is no music, there is no accompaniment, there is no instrument and no band. Extempore, he performs a song that he wrote to keep up the spirits of his village.
अरे रे नीरज पोस्ट कंपानी फेरी जा दक्षिण कोरिया आम भिटा माटी किंपाने बुलोटी देखाऊ मिछ चाकिरिया अरे रे नीरज पोस्ट कंपानी फेरी जा दक्षिण कोरिया आम भिटा माटी किंपाने बुलोटी देखाऊ मिछ चाकिरिया लोटी नेब भाई आम पान धान मा माटी ठारू करी स्थापन लोटी नेब भाई काजू जे सजना सबुले बलोटी काजू जे सजना सबुले बलोट छिड़ाइब आम नड़िया अरे रे नीलज पोस्क कंपानी फेरी जा दक्षिण कोरिया ये द्वितीय काश्मीरी ढिंकिया भूई लक्षे लक्षे लोक तामथा नुआई द्वितीय काश्मीरी ढिंकिया भूई लक्षे लक्षे लोक तामथा नुआई नुआ गाँ कुजंग 3 पंचायत नुआ गाँ कुजंग 3 पंचायत बांधी चंती संगे मेलिया अरे रे नीलज पोस्क कंपानी फेरी जा दक्षिण कोरिया रे जटा धार ठारे जेबे पोस्क हेब एरसमावासी भेड़ा बुड़ी जीव जटा धार ठारे जेबे रे न करिबे चाष भांगी देबे बास न करिबे चाष भांगी देबे बास न रखिबे धान ओलिया अरे रे नीलज पोस्क कंपानी फेरी जा दक्षिण कोरिया रे गड़ कुजंगरे से कुंज बिहारी बसी छंती बाहु से प्रसार करी गड़ कुजंगरे से कुंज बिहारी रे गदा धरी करे छंती महावीर गदा धरी करे छंती महावीर बाडई भांगिब फरिया अरे रे नीलज पोस्क कंपानी फेरी जा दक्षिण कोरिया ये दिने भाग्य रवि रथ हुईब से रथे अभय रथी होइथिब दिने भाग्य रवि से रथ हुई से रथे अभय रथी होइथिब तार धनुर्बाणे पृथ्वी कंपिब तार धनुर्बाणे पृथ्वी पोस्क हेब हाहाकारिया अरे रे नीलज पोस्क कंपानी फेरी जा दक्षिण कोरिया
Now I'm going to show you from another corner of the country a 30-second video of another singer, much younger. This is in the remotest panchayat of South India. It's called Edamalapu in Idukki district of Kerala. It's on the border of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. It's a unique tribal region in that only one tribe lives there. Usually there will be 2 or 3 in a given region. But only the Mudavans live there. We walk into it takes 18 kilometers through the jungle to reach the panchayat, 2 more kilometers to reach the school, which is a tribal school. We walk into the school. It's a wild elephant area. The crossings of the herds you can see. In the season, you can see huge herds of wild elephants passing through. And we go into the school and ask the children the usual dumb questions that journalists ask children. What's your favorite subject? Now, by the way, that's a dumb question in an Indian school. You know why it's a dumb question in an Indian school? Because kids are smart people. If they look, what are the first 2 kids saying? If they said science and they didn't get beaten up or punished, then everybody will say science. Am I right? So, I mean, they know what's good for them and they play up accordingly. In this was class 1 to 4, age group 6 to 10, and we have 1 or 2 older girls of 11 or so. What's your favorite subject? Only one kid says math. So we pounce on this and challenge him, show us your math. He moves so fast, he's finished 1 to 12 tables and he's back at table 4 before we put the lid on. But all the other children say English. So this is curious because not a word of English is spoken in the panchayat. No signboard exists in English. No English newspapers circulate. There's no television, there's no connection. There's no document, no signpost, nothing in English. And they determinedly as a class say English is our favorite subject. So they said, show me some English. One group of, sitting, one little group of girls was seated separately, close to teacher, in a special bench, doubtless the intellectual elite of the class. I said, okay, show me some English, and they did. They sang beautifully. Do not ask me where they got the lyrics. I can only clarify to you that no potato is grown within 100 kilometers of the village, nor is it consumed in the village, and nor is English spoken within 100 kilometers of the village. But listen to that.
Potato, potato, oh my dear potato, I like potato, you like potato, we like potato, 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 potato. Potato, I like potato, you like potato, we like potato, we like potato.
Wasn't that something? Now, just let me give you a glance at the site. Listen, this was shot on a cell phone. Anybody can, and I'm here actually to drum up volunteers, anybody can contribute to this website. Anybody, provided it falls into our mandate, which is everyday lives of everyday people. Onkar Mandlekar, who has edited the film, and Siddharth Adilkar, who shot it. Onkar Mandlekar is an IIT product. The guy who has shot much of the films on our site, quite a few films on our site, and he is an IIT product. Anyone can contribute to the site, writing, photographs, video, audio. It doesn't mean that anything will go up. This is an edited site. It is a curated site. We won't allow just anything to go up. We control for quality. This is not, anyone can contribute, but this is not Wikipedia. A lot of important decisions are democratically taken by me. One of the categories that is easiest to contribute to is a project we have called Faces. 35 years, and it strikes me the astonishing facial diversity of this country. So we started doing a little project, and even before we launched 40 photographers at Secretary, without being asked, what is the idea? The idea is that there are 629, now I think 640 districts in India. And we are shooting one male, one female, and one child or adolescent face from every one of 640 districts. So about 2,000 faces on a page with metadata attached to each of those faces. We found two spectacular things. One is the extent of facial diversity. The second thing we found was the occupational diversity. The first 100 faces we had, there were 300 occupations, because ordinary people have to do 2 or 3 things in order to survive. Everybody does 2 or 3 jobs. Purna Das was a singer, a poet, a fisherman, a laborer, a head load porter. He does all of those things in order to survive. Right? So you're looking on a single page, you're looking at the facial and occupational diversity of your country. Let me just take you back there and then I'll come back to the beginning. These are the A, B, C, D, G doesn't mean we don't know our alphabet. It simply means that all districts whose names start with A come under A, and so on. Let me take you to a sample. S. Now all districts that start with S, look at it. That's Muzaffar from Shopian district. Occupation, daily wager. Village, Tirpora. District Shopian, State Jammu and Kashmir. Date 24th June. Photographer, Subhashita Nath, camera, iPhone. Okay. And they've been shot on many other phones other than iPhone, so you don't have to have an iPhone. Then what, I mean, see this. This is an Indian face, and so is this from the Andamans. I want you to note that metadata, because if you're going to give me photographs from your districts, rural people, or even rural migrants in the city, I want that data. And look at this, this too is an Indian face. That's Ohami, a Hatta gatherer in the Jarawa tribal reserve of the Andamans. By the way, the great Andamanese tribe is almost extinct, and there is only one speaker of that language, just one. She speaks to the birds and the trees in order to keep speaking, because there is no one else to speak it to. That is from Salem district, a fruit seller. Also from Salem district, in one very famous old temple, is, I don't know about you guys, but this is the temple priest I've seen with the hippest blow dry haircut. And Seva volunteer and farmer. This was the initiator of one of the truly great dairy farming experiments in Maharashtra. And wherever there's a story attached to the person, we give you the link to the story. Organic farmer, volunteer at the time here. She is, by the way, again, unique occupation, a professional well digger. Your well has gone dry, it's about 25-30 feet. She and her family, you hire them 2 days, 3 days, 4 days labor, they'll make it 60 feet. Using a minimum of machinery. Because otherwise they wouldn't have an earning, they would have an income. Small paddy grower in South Goa. Natalina Das, student and farmer. That's Jesus da Costa, fisherman from South Goa, and as you can see, he's been into his third one of the evening. And Ghulam Muhammad, and then Pauli Jaitru Giri, a daily laborer. Yeah? So that's one set of the faces that you can look at. And that Faces project is full of a young Dalit boy from Kovalam village in Tamil Nadu, 2 hours from Chennai. The village was devastated in the tsunami. He spent most of his youth in a tsunami relief camp. Then he is, his mother is an illiterate construction laborer, but the strongest character in the film, because she is determined that her son shall achieve his dreams. And his dreams are completely at variance with his peer group generation. He did not want to be a software techie. He did not want to be an MBA, nor did he want to go to IIT. Thank you. You know what he wanted to be and what he has become? In the top 10% bracket now, a classical Bharatanatyam dancer. A boy coming from a community facing untouchability in its own village. But he did more than that. He was so keen on Bharatanatyam and couldn't get entry. One of his aunts told him, come to Dakshin Chitra, the Museum of South Indian Heritage. There's a teacher there teaching Tamil folk dance. So Kali Hirapadran goes to the folk dance teacher and masters the 3 ancient Tamil folk dances, one of which is mentioned in Sangam literature, which means it's 2000 years old. After mastering folk dance, he applies for and gets admission to Kalakshetra, the #1 Bharatanatyam school anywhere. In June last year, Kali Veerapadran passed out of Kalakshetra with a first class, which is a huge achievement in Kalakshetra. Is taken back for postgraduate studies and has been made an official member of the official Kalakshetra troupe to tour abroad, but could not go on his first tour. He had no passport because he had no birth certificate. Anyway, that's being sorted out. He will go. Here is this guy. Mother, construction laborer. Father died when he was a month or 2 old. Look at him.
என் பெயர் காளி. நான் ஒரு பாரம்பரிய நடக்கலைஞர். பேர் கோலம். ரொம்ப அழகான ரொம்ப கிராமம், வீட்டு பக்கத்துலேயே பீச், ரொம்ப அழகான பிளேஸ். நான் இப்போ கலாக்ஷேத்ராவில் 4th year டிப்ளமோ இன் பரதநாட்டியம் படிச்சுட்டு இருக்கேன். சின்ன வயசில் இருக்கும்போது ஒரு 6 மாதம் 7 மாதம் இருக்கும்போது அப்பா இருக்காங்க. அதனால பாட்டி வீட்டில் கொடுத்துட்டாங்க. ஸோ பாட்டி தான் எனக்கு சின்ன வயசுலேருந்தே வளர்த்துட்டு இருந்தாங்க. ஸ்கூல் போயிட்டு வீடு போட்ட ஸ்கூல். செகண்ட் ஸ்டாண்டர்டில் ஸ்கூலில் ஒரு சின்ன டான்ஸ் பண்ணிகிட்டு இருந்தேன். அப்போ டீச்சர் பார்த்துட்டு இல்லை நீ ஸ்டேஜில் ஆடணும் அப்படின்னு சொன்னாங்க. அப்போ எனக்கு தெரியாது நான் இவ்வளோ பெரிய டான்ஸ்லாம் பண்ணுவேன்னு சொல்லி.
ஒன்றாவதுலேருந்து பரதநாட்டியம் தான் ஆடுவான். சூப்பராக டான்ஸ் ஆகும். 1ஆவதுலேருந்து 1ஆவது 2ஆவது 10ஆவது 12ஆவது வரைக்கும் அவன் தான் டான்ஸு. இவங்க தான் என்னோட அம்மா. எல்லா வெற்றிக்கும் இப்போ நான் டான்ஸில் இருக்கிறதுக்கு காரணமும் அவன் 1ஆவதுலேருந்து டான்ஸ் ஆட பழகிட்டான். அதனால நல்லா ஆடுவான். அவங்க சொன்னாங்க நல்லா இங்கிலீஷ் படிக்கணும், எல்லாம் படிக்கணும், நல்லா ஆடுறான். 60 பேரில் 40 பேர் செலக்ஷன் ஆகும். அதில் ஒரு ஆள் ஃபஸ்ட் டே வந்துருந்தேன். நானும் அம்மாவும் வந்துருந்தோம்.
அழுவேன், என்னம்மா படிக்கணுமா இல்லை வேலைக்கு போயிட்டுமா, என்ன பண்ணுறதுன்னு தெரியலம்மா, ரொம்ப கஷ்டமாக இருக்குமா அப்படின்னு.
முயற்சி பண்ணுறா, ஆர்வமாக இரு, அப்போ தான் உங்களுக்கு வந்து அந்த டான்ஸ் உங்களுக்கு கிடைக்கும்.
ஸோ அந்த ஃபோக்லேருந்து நம்ம என்ன பண்ணலாம் அவங்களோட ஃபஸ்ட் இயர் ஸ்டூடெண்ட்ஸ் டேக்கு.
பாலிங்கிற பையனும் என்கிட்ட அவன் பள்ளியில் படிக்கும்போது இங்கே வந்து வர போகிறோம்னா அவன் கலை மேலே ரொம்ப அவனுக்கு ஆர்வம். பள்ளியில் படிக்கும்போது ரொம்ப இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட்டாக பண்ணுவான். அப்போ அவன் வந்து இங்கே படிச்சுட்டு இருக்கும்போது தான் ரெண்டாவது அவன்
ஆசை இருக்குது நிறைய பண்ணணும். கலையுமே எனக்கு கண்மாக இருக்குது.
Look at the summaries on the sides and giving a student how to cite the document correctly. The year, the author, the copyright, the date, the name, and then the main factoids of the report. In the NCUS report on poverty, on rural poverty, you have a factoid which made history when they stated that 836 million Indians live on less than 20 rupees a day expenditure. So there you are, you have the factoids, you have the report. These are not links, you have the report in full text with all annexures, with everything, so that you have as well. Then you have, these are the different categories in which the site falls. We keep adding categories. The latest we have is called Pari for Schools. Schools and colleges have got in touch with us, and the students will do assignments for Pari on rural India. Believe me, you'll be surprised what they come up with. I was in a school on the Coimbatore border called Vidyavanam, Forest of Knowledge. The children, the school ends at 8th standard. The children had done a project on rice. They have cultivated 5 plots of rice. Half the children are Irula tribals, 50% are tribals, mainly Irulas. And then they had this hall filled with project on rice. There were as a guy who was covering rice paddy for 22 years, there was a hell of a lot I didn't know. There was a hell of a lot you would know. Toyota, that glamour name in automobiles. What does the word Toyota mean? Bountiful paddy field. What does Honda mean? Rich paddy field. Toyota was so ashamed of its agrarian connection that it changed the D to a T. Honda has kept the D. Okay. It was actually Toyota, the full actual branding. Then it became Toyota. Nakasone means Mr. Middle Road. Those children, in an age group 10 to 12, held a debate. I was the chief guest on their annual day. They held a debate, 12-minute debate on GM crops. What were we debating at age 10 to? I don't know if we were debating any that. And it was a highly sophisticated debate. You would automatically make the mental comparison with the crap you see on television panels. I asked the principal of the school whether she would give admission to a couple of anchors for re-education. She said yes. So you look at the categories. The first is things we do. That's labor. Our bias is towards labor and languages. Okay? We have many formats. This is a village in West Bengal that has a firecracker competition. The firecrackers are not judged by the sound. They are judged by the aesthetics, by the light and the aesthetics. Yeah? It's done by Madhushri Mukherjee. So they have teams that compete against each other in the making of these firecrackers. So you have these spectacular photographs of the making of firecrackers and the use of firecrackers. This is the one that won the competition. Okay? So we have things we do, things we make, that's for craftspersons, artists. Farming, of course, is self-explanatory. Faces you've seen, little takes you've seen. The biggest category emerging is rural in the urban. Migrant workers. I've only shown you videos and photos, but this is thousands and thousands of articles will be on the site. There are already a few hundred. By the end of the year, there will be many more. So it moves seamlessly between video, audio, still photo, and we also have an audio zone. One of the things we're doing in recording, we're determined to record every single Indian language there is. And one of the things we're doing, which you can do by the way, is to record in every language the most commonly used proverb in the rural region of that language. What is the most commonly used proverb in rural Bihar? What is the most commonly repeated proverb in East UP? Like that. So that we are not only collecting proverbs and languages, you're collecting wisdom as well. Of 780 kinds perhaps. There are separate categories for women, Adivasis, Dalits, resource conflicts, a unique, this is my favorite, personally my favorite, all the categories I created. These are the last living freedom fighters of your country. Those of you who were not students of history may or may not know that the great battles of freedom were fought in rural India, not in the urban. They were fought in rural India. And the rural Indians who were freedom fighters never gained the prominence, never gained the importance, never gained the glamour or recognition that their counterparts who went to Oxford and Cambridge did from the urban areas. Right? I spent many years interviewing the last living freedom fighters. This is also part of your heritage, part of your legacy. Who were these people? What were they like? Lakshmi Panda, the one and only Odia woman who went to who joined Netaji Bose's Indian National Army at the age of 13 because her parents had been killed in a British bombing attack as the war with Japan was going on. You can see her at age 13. That's her proudest position. She's dead now. Her with a rifle at age 13 in the INA of Subhash Bose. Right? So this is a very special category for me sentimentally, the last freedom fighters. But that's not all. And we keep adding categories. Okay? So we have rural sports. We have Musafir, which is like a blog on travel writing. I think this is a purely only in India photograph. How the hell he got that bicycle up there? That was taken on my phone, and I took it hanging out of my car, which you see there, at right angles. He is astonished by somebody torso completely out of the car at right angles. I am astonished by how the hell he got there. Maybe someone should have taken a picture of me also at the time. Yeah, so articles, reports, library, you name it, we're doing it. We also have a dynamic map. All the articles are GPS mapped. So you can know exactly the locations where the article was written. You can know, suppose you are from Latehar in Jharkhand, you can go to the map and search if there is content from your block, from your district, wherever it is. And you can move from the article to the map or from the map to the articles in a given area. So that, I'm going to end with 1 2-minute clip, if you will bear with me, of the children in a debate on GM crops. Would you like to see that? Yes.
My first point is, lack of vitamin A causes blindness in all over the world and it affects 50 million children. Vitamin A can be found in milk, butter, meat, and yellow vegetables. Normal rice does not have very much of vitamin A. The most example of genetically modified rice is golden rice. Golden rice is called golden rice because it is in yellow color and it has more vitamin A. Golden rice also contain iron and zinc. Golden rice good for third world countries.
Now the time for countering.
There is no need of golden rice. Instead of that, we can drink milk and eat meat and green and yellow vegetables.
21-minute video, and we haven't had time to see a lot of other things because I know we want to ask questions and discuss it. Welcome to the People's Archive of Bombay.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, what I would request is we raise hands and I'll make sure that we scan around the room so that we get a chance to ask questions starting from this. And please mention more rounds than I could.
It would be interesting to compare that statistic with the statistic of food security or how secure or insecure we become as for food is concerned. Secondly, I almost sense a kind of disdain for urban space or urbanization in your lecture. So, do you believe that rural spaces should become more self-sufficient, or should urbanization stop entirely, or the migration should stop entirely?
You have another question? Relevant to this debate, was there any change in Vidarbha after BT Cotton? Has it made a difference either way?
What do you suggest to someone who is graduating from IIT Bombay or some other college? So what do you expect him to do something for this? Like you are going to go for a job or higher studies or something else. So like everyone are doing that, so most of us will follow that. What do you think we should do?
Okay, let me start with the third. And go backwards. There are, whether in Vidarbha or anywhere else in rural India, there are incidentally several IIT products working in rural communities, and some very interesting work has been done by them. I want to tell you something about the site and what people can do, whether you're IIT or not. There are, every single thing on the site was done by a volunteer, including the building of an extremely sophisticated and complex platform was done by 30 techies around the world, many of whom had never seen each other and still haven't, collaborating on GitHub and X. Okay? They did it. Most of the techies are from an open source software company called ThoughtWorks. But they didn't do it as an assignment of the company, they did it as volunteers. We were allowed to use their space, everything else, but we weren't billed 1 hour for it. If you want to do things, you can do it. All of us are volunteers doing this on our free time. Every one of us is doing this on free time. So if you want to do something on the site, you can. Outside of the site, if you want to do things, there are hundreds and hundreds of non-profit groups which are, and political groups and political movements which you should not shy away from. Okay? Doing various things like the resistance to the Costco evictions or building something in terms of quality housing or in addressing the water issues. By the way, the biggest crisis this country faces, which doesn't affect you and me and therefore we pay little attention, is actually water. You have no idea of how deep the crisis of water in this country is. Okay? There are IIT products working on the issue of water, and how do we have a more just and equitable system of water utilization in the country. There's no shortage of things for you to do. It depends on your specialization, your expertise, your interest. You may be an IIT person, but you may be interested in photography and in photo documentation. You may be interested in being an activist with an organization. There's nothing to stop me from following the urge to connect with your fellow human beings. The idea of eyesight is to connect people to each other. That's one. About BT cotton, Vidarbha is the one place which is the maximum, has the maximum percentage of use of BT cotton. In fact, Vidarbha is the lowest productivity zone of cotton in India and perhaps the world. The figures are given to you by Mr. Sharad Pawar in 2012 December on the floor of the Rajya Sabha, where he says the quintal per acre is 1.2 quintals per acre. That is the lowest blend figure of production you can get in cotton. Second, when it's introduced, production rose. I'm trying to give you a context and a background. Immediately production rose, and that there's a reason. Any new thing you introduce, initially the first 2-3 seasons it will have that. Now take Brazil. You take Brazil. 86% of its cotton is traditional varieties. 14% of its cotton is BT. Okay? 14% of its cotton is BT. There is no difference in the productivity level of the non-BT and the BT. The 86%, there are patches and regions of the 86% which in fact deliver higher output, higher productivity than the 14% which have BT. Third, you can go to the Government of India's Cotton Research Center in Nagpur. They have done the figure from 2001 to 2012 as BT grew. What was the acreage under BT? What is the productivity rise or increase under BT year-wise? BT, by the way, entered your country illegally and came through illegal trials and presented the government with a fait accompli, and they legalized it in 2002. But it was around from 1998. However, if you look from 2001 to 2006, there is a strong rise in productivity of cotton. But you know the fun, you can't ascribe it to BT because during that entire period, BT accounts for less than 5% of acreage. It accounts for less than 5% of the total acreage in a period when the cotton productivity is growing. From 2007 to 2012, BT is accounting for 75% of the acreage, 60% of the acreage up to 75%, and the productivity is declining. You take your pick. I don't have a problem if you want to use BT. And just, you ask me what happened in Vidarbha, I'm telling you. I think that, one can have, another thing that you should know, BT in India is a hybrid. It's not, you understand the difference? It's not a straight line crop. What they have given you is a hybrid of BT. The Center for Cotton Research has been trying for 10 years to create an Indian straight line BT. Do you know the kind of royalty that the farmer pays, the bankruptcy involved? One pack of BT seed between 2004 and 2007 was costing 1,800 rupees per bag of 450 grams. You know how much local seed cost in 1991? 9 rupees a kilogram and 1,800 rupees for 450 grams, which means 1 kilogram of BT seed in 2004 was costing 4,000 rupees. 450 grams, 900 grams is 3,600, another 100 grams is about 4,000 rupees. What an exponential leap in cost. When I entered Vidarbha to cover the suicides first time in 2003, I'd been in Vidarbha many times before, but I went to cover that. At that time, the cost of cultivating 1 acre of unirrigated cotton was 10,000 to 4,000 rupees. I'm talking now. The 1 acre of unirrigated cotton, it cost 2,500 to 4,000 rupees to cultivate. It cost 10,000 to 12,000 rupees to cultivate 1 acre of irrigated cotton. We're talking about 2002, 2003. Today, 1 acre of irrigated cotton, 35,000 rupees. 1 acre of unirrigated cotton, 15 to 20,000 rupees. The costs have gone up fivefold, but has the farmer's income gone up fivefold? Think about it. You are conducting agriculture for the corporations, not for the farmer. That's something that you have to understand. That's why they're looking for an Indian BT strain. Now, your position on this is it's okay with me. So what are you speaking in this meeting? But you're not going to get anything. The evidence does not show you anything of the kind of results that is promised. Do you know how they sold it to the farmer? They used the biggest stars of Bollywood and Marathi cinema as brand ambassadors. People who are in the drawing room, the living room of every household in rural Marathi. Nana Patekar was the brand ambassador. Okay? Nana Patekar. You know, that is the biggest Marathi icon of cinema. He travels both Hindi and Marathi cinema. I'm told that he seriously regrets what has happened, and I noticed that he has not appeared in any ads after that. Now here's another thing. When they were charging 1,800 rupees for a bag of 450 grams, the government of Andhra Pradesh took them to court. It took them to the Monopolies and Restricted Trade Practices Act. Overnight, Monsanto dropped the price from 1,800 to 900. Then tell me what was the royalty they were making when it was 1,800? What is the royalty they were making? If they could bring it down to 925 and still make profits, they were making a profit of 1,400 rupees per bag. 1,400 was their royalty. Yeah? So it destroyed the economies of scale, it destroyed the cultivation cost, the input cost per acre went completely out of control of the farm. And still nowhere. So last year they tried fixing the statistics like they did with suicide. They left out all the regions where there had been a disaster in the cotton field. So you're looking at a figure which is based on a much lower acreage, because for 3 years they have shown a decline. Then you have I have no disdain for urban India. I am an urban Indian.
Not for urban India, for urbanization of Puducherry.
Yeah, you know, there is urbanization and there is urbanization. If you move from Delhi to Mumbai and you stay in Kappare, that's one form of urbanization. If you move from Mehboob Nagar to BARC and sleep on the pavement, that's another kind of urbanization. So who you are, look at the migrations with a class prism, with a caste prism, with a social prism. I am a migrant, and I have benefited from each migration I've made. My parents migrated, my father migrated from Kakinada and Andhra Pradesh to what was then Madras. I was born and brought up in Madras. And after completing school and college in Chennai, it had not yet become Chennai. They waited till I left. Then I went to JNU up north. Then after 4 years, 3.5, 4 years in Delhi, I came to Mumbai, which remains my home. So I'm hardly there, but it is my home. Each shift I made benefited me enormously. And it is really stupid for me to think that because it benefited me enormously, all migrations are good. Right?
But then why do they choose to migrate? I mean,
what do you think you see, again, you know, a little sensitivity towards why people do things is in order. Why do they choose to migrate? What makes you think they chose? What makes you think they had a choice? Those are called distress migrations. When you have absolutely no choice to go there. I wish I could show you from another thing. You know, one of the things when I was covering water last year, you know what's coming up in Mumbai? In Goregaon, not too far away. You know what's coming up in Mumbai? And has already come up in Goregaon Park and has already come up even on the edge of Baramati. Multi-storied buildings with a swimming pool on each floor. You want to see the photographs? 32 towers, 37 are being built in Goregaon. Each 37 floors called Aquaria Grande. 74 swimming pools. In Pune, if you just drive Mumbai to Pune, you will see thousands of holdings for real estate, for villas. Each of them will emphasize how many swimming pools it's got. You know what I do? I go and interview the construction laborers. You know who they are? They are marginal farmers and agricultural laborers who fled their village because there's no water. And they're coming here and building our swimming pools. Okay? Understand that it's called distress migration. A lot of the migrations are not voluntary. I can force you to move. I can make your life impossible and make you move. It's not your choice. It's involuntary migration. Tell me, in the city of Delhi today, we have the data on this. There are 2 lakh girls, adolescent girls, only from the small populated state of Jharkhand. Adolescent girls, you know what they are? They are servant maids and domestic maids on 24 hours to the middle classes of Delhi. The girl will be woken up at 3 a.m. to do chores in the house. You think that's a choice? A decision of choice? I don't. You know, if we live in a free market world and a world of choice, then I don't think the world would have 1.4 billion hungry people, because I'm fairly sure that if they had a choice, they would choose to eat